Hey everyone, Quantum here, and I got a quick update for you on the Sapphire Steel Hero deck. After testing 4 more matches, I went 2-2, but I actually beat 2 meta decks, 1 Sapphire Steel and 1 Ruby Sapphire, believe it or not. The 2 losses were against Ruby as expected, like I mentioned in the previous video about this deck where I covered the deck profile, and 1 match I said this deck is going to be very weak to Ruby, and that is the case. But like I said, we did beat a Ruby Sapphire, which was very surprising. I did make some edits to the deck, so I just want to cover these quickly before we jump into those 2 gameplay matches. But you can just skip ahead if you want. I did opt to go a little bit heavier on the Sapphire side, including the new Anna Braving the Storm, the 2-cost inkable 1/4 body that gets +1 lore whenever you have another hero character in play. This card actually was phenomenal when I used it in like the 2 matches, and it generated a lot of lore early on that helped me close the game out later on with something like the Fill, where you can play Fill as well as a couple of heroes at the same time and just generate lore very quickly. If the opponent isn't on board wipes, whatever you play with the Fill, if they can't out it right away, you're just going to quest with those bodies and gain additional lore. So the aggro mindset with this deck is kind of the way you want to approach it, I think. I cut back on some of the top end. I just reduced some of the ratios, like I reduced the Mickey down to 3. I reduced this Mickey down to 3. Just little changes like that. You can go to the old deck list profile if you want, like that video linked in the description, if you want the full list of the changes. And then another card that I added in that I think made a huge difference is the Great Stone Dragon. So the more I use this card, the more I become a fan of it. It just basically allows you in the control matchups to not worry about having to ink from your hand, and you can just ink from your discard pile. While you definitely don't want to get into the grind game with control matchups, this will allow you to dump your hand onto the board more effectively and then whole new world into advantage later on. Hopefully your opponent is just not going to have enough removal for all of your threats as you consistently dump them onto the board, and you don't have to worry about the disadvantage of inking and playing a card each turn if you have the Great Stone Dragon in rotation, because it will allow you to ink from your discard. So those are the changes. Let's go ahead and jump into these matches where I can commentate and try to explain some of how the new changes work. So one of the things I will say is, as you guys know, if you watch my videos, you probably know I like to post a lot of going second matches, because going first, it's very easy to maintain advantage usually and win the game. What I will say about this deck is, unfortunately, it's a deck that needs every advantage it can get if you do want to play it a little bit more competitively. And both the matches I won, I was on the play. Both the matches I lost, I was on the draw. On the draw against Ruby, right, for both of my losses, like I said, I went 2-2. It's absolutely brutal because you don't really have too many cards that are able to swing tempo. I actually cut the Judy Hopps and the I Find Them, I Flatten Them, basically all the item removal cards from this deck. As you can see, I'm playing them in this version here, but you'll see in the second match where we cut them and we used the new deck list that we showed at the beginning. And the reason for that is because they weren't nearly as impactful as I thought they were, but you know, that's why you test, because you kind of figure out what's the strength, what's the weaknesses of your deck. And if you know me or you watch my videos, you know that I'm more of a control-oriented player, not really an aggro-oriented player. And because of that, I was trying to do these control aspects in a deck that really should be focused on aggroing. So things like the Judy Hopps and the Heavy Storm, I'm just going to call it that, the thing that wipes all the items, they are control-oriented cards, and they do slow down your game plan a little bit, right? So you definitely want to just kind of go all in on your strategy. You don't want to kind of split your focus, because that results in basically you not doing anything well. And if this deck is an aggro deck, that's what you want to focus on. Here you can see against these slower Sapphire decks, you should realize that your only win condition is basically getting a lot of lore early and then closing the game out, like I said, with some of those non-questing sources of lore potentially, like the Fill. Thankfully, against non-Ruby matchups, this deck actually seems to be pretty decent as an aggro deck. Now, unfortunately, we're drawing into a ton of uninkables, and as you saw in the deck list profile, we're only running like 12 uninkables. So the fact that I just drew multiple uninkable after uninkable was really unfortunate, but it looks like my opponent is slow to try to take advantage of this. We are going to play out the Mickey here in order to just continue to ramp so that we don't miss on ink, but you could argue that I could have maybe cast a whole new world, but hard casting it there just feels really bad, so I opted to play the Mickey instead, just again putting more aggro pressure on board. Thankfully, I kept the Zeus because the Bell wasn't really too threatening, and it looks like next turn I'm going to have to hard cast this Zeus in order to take out the Tinkerbell, because that card absolutely would decimate our board here, right? Quite obviously. Unfortunately, the opponent has those popsicles to heal up their Bell, and we're in a crazy game state where the opponent realizes they have to slow me down a lot, and they're using the Bell as an aggro, not aggro, sorry, as a like board control card by taking out my threats and healing up. Like Bell is being used as a sweeper, pretty much, right? Which is kind of crazy. It's going to try to mop up my board here. Funny that the opponent inks a Hiram there. My guess is that they're also on a whole new world, or they think that we're going to be on a whole new world soon. But after hard casting the Zeus, I opt not to ink and just keep the Robin Hood in my hand, because this is the card that I'm going to have to try to get a tempo advantage from when I play this out. Hopefully it doesn't get outed, and then I'm able to play the whole new world or sing the whole new world off of it. Unfortunately, the opponent does have to grab your swords, and our board gets completely wiped with that. This is where the Cogsworth would come into play to really help us not dodge, but like mitigate the damage from those steel spells. The opponent reveals a second bell, and I'm just like, okay, even if they go up to 10 ink here, they only quest for 10, and then even if they have a lucky dime, they'll only go to 15. So I think I'm pretty safe with my board state the way it is, because if the opponent can't out my board, or even if they do, I can hard cast the whole new world, and they probably can't deal with the Robin Hood and the fill. So if I just hard cast whole new world, ink something for turn, and if I draw a 1 or like any 1 or 2 drop hero, the fill quests for 2, and the hero will get me the last lore I need in order to win the game. So I top deck a third whole new world, and again, this is wild, right? I just play it, and thankfully I do draw what I need there. I should definitely, after drawing all those uninkables in the start of the game, ink the Mickey Mouse, play another Mickey Mouse in order to get 1 lore off Phil, and then quest with Phil for game, and that's how we were able to beat Sapphire Steel. In this next match, I actually get the same Ruby Sapphire player that just beat me like 2 matches ago or something. And there's no point in showing that. I just basically just get completely stomped. I think I get up to like 10 lore, and then I just have no cards in hand, and they just keep removing every single thing I play. That's how it usually will go against Ruby Sapphire. But you know, in this match, I'm like, okay, let me just give it another try now that I'm on the play, and I've added in these new Annas. Maybe that will make a difference. As you can see, I have it in my hand here. Also, it depends on how quickly Ruby Sapphire is able to get up to their top end, because you know, I could potentially come out the gate swinging pretty hard, and as we know, against Ruby Sapphire, aggro could sometimes give them a bit of trouble, especially if they don't have a really great starting hand. The opponent does have a turn 1 play though, in playing the Develop Your Brain, which is going to help them increase consistency, but turn 2 they only drop an Ice Block, and I'm like, okay, this might be an opportunity for me to kind of get a little bit ahead here. So here you just see me continually questing. I'm up to 4 lore. This Anna being a 2 quester on 2 really helps, but my hand is obviously, you know, not great, because I don't want to ink this fill, and if I do have to ink it and hard cast a whole new world, I am going to be a little bit behind. Thankfully we draw a Hercules, which we're able to ink, and then I'm going to opt to play the fill here, which you can argue is a little bit of a mistake, but I just continue to quest, go up to 8, and I guess the goal will be to hopefully draw an inkable and then just hard cast this whole new world next turn. But we are in a little bit of trouble because it will depend on what the opponent plays. You know, you would think that maybe having them play a Hiram would be good because they waste their Ice Block and are able to draw 2. Unfortunately, this is some of the interaction that why this matchup is so hard, is because all your characters have such low strength. The Ice Block into the Sisu, the Ice Block into the Shift Sisu, the Ice Block into Madame Medusa, an Ice Block into Brawl, they all just absolutely decimate your deck here. And then the opponent puts a second Ice Block down, and I'm just like, yeah, that's kind of brutal. Unfortunately, I draw, well, not unfortunately, this card's actually really good to draw here, but I can't play the Mickey as well, which would have been really great for me. So I'm just stuck playing the Stone Dragon and passing turn, hoping that the opponent doesn't have an explosive hand either. Unfortunately, they do drop the Hiram. And like I said, this may not be the worst because, you know, using up all their ink here to draw, if I'm able to whole new world away some of that advantage, that would be nice. The unfortunate part is that I do... or I cannot deal with that Hiram right now in the ready state. So the opponent forgets to Ice Block down the card before they challenge it, and thankfully they take an extra point of damage on their Sisu there. So I'm just going to go ahead and ink and then hard cast the whole new world, see that I get rid of a Fishbone Quill and another Hiram, and then I'm going to use my Mickey to take out the Sisu, and you can just see kind of why this is a little bit of a tough matchup for us here. Funnily enough, we are ahead on the ink count here, but giving the opponent a fresh grip of 7, we all know how Ruby Sapphire is able to play this into advantage. That's why it's, you know, so dominant against the whole new world decks, like with against Amber Steel and whatnot. But we are at 11 lore, and we do have a full hand, and we do have a fill that we can probably play out with a couple of heroes in order to gain lore. You could argue that maybe I should reserve the fill until I can dump more characters. But again, only playing Robin Hood and Simba as my 1-drops, like I can't stall the clock out too long here. So we're gonna use the Stone Dragon, get some ink for free there, so we may not need to ink for turn, but I do have another whole new world, so because of that I might opt to continue to ink here and just aggressively cast that whole new world. But the Simba is going to draw and discard. We get 2 lore off of the fill there, and I fully expect my board to get wiped out here, right? Either a Shift Sisu, probably not a Be Prepared, but you know, some form of like Madame Medusa or other strength-based removal brawls, etc. And this is why, again, keep saying it, this matchup is so difficult. But the whole new world here might be able to get us some additional advantage, because at this point at 13 lore, if the opponent can't clear off my other 2 characters on threat, I'm going to go to 15, and then if I can whole new world into another fill potentially, I think I've used up 2 already though, which is unfortunate, I might be able to just claw out a little bit of the lore that's needed in order to just get you know, as ahead as I need. Unfortunately, the opponent Hurons into another fishbone, so they're going to be able to dump their hand even faster and get some more ink, which isn't great for us. But we know we're probably going to lose these 2 characters on board after we quest with them, so I'm just going to go ahead and generate what advantage I can, get the lore, get the ink, and then continue to ink and play out a beast probably, and then hard cast the whole new world. So just getting in as many interactions as I can. Hard casting those whole new worlds feels really bad, but what can I do? Unless I have a Cogsworth on board to sing it, there's not much chance of me having a beast or a Robin Hood survive, because again of all of the ice block and strength based removal that Ruby plays. So again, fully anticipating that my board is going to get wiped here, hoping to draw into another fill, but that doesn't happen unfortunately. And sure enough, yeah, the ice block into the brawl takes me down, and the opponent still has 8 ink to work with. You can just see how difficult it is. This Huron, you know, just consistently drawing them cards, it's not feeling too great. What's actually funny is in the match that I lost against this player, I did have a chance to win. I didn't draw any of my whole new worlds in my first 25 cards, and they were down to like 18 cards in their deck, and I had like 11 ink, and I had a Cogsworth on board and a Beast Tragic Hero, and I was like, if I draw 2, if I draw one of these whole new worlds, I could sing one of them into hopefully drawing into a second one, sing that second one, then hopefully draw into a third one, and then just hard cast the third one and deck them out and win the game. That was my win condition in the match that I actually lost, where I was on the draw. Unfortunately, I didn't see any whole new worlds that match, but that is potentially a win condition against Ruby Sapphire, given that they draw so many cards if you don't out their Hiram here, right? So they go a little bit wide on their board, but I do have a Zeus and a Fire the Cannons here, so I'm going to ink the Stone Dragon because I don't need it, and then of course ink with the Stone Dragon on the field. We're up to 13 ink here. I'm going to hard cast this Zeus on the 2 questing Sisu because I just want to slow the opponent's clock down as much as possible, and then fire the cannons on the other Sisu. Not that I fear the shift, but again, just slowing down the opponent where I can here, and probably dropping the Cogsworth and Akita is the best choice. The Cogsworth is only outable with the 8-drop Sisu, which now they can't shift because they have to be able to non-target banish it with the wiping ability of the Sisu Emboldened or Empowered Sibling, I think it actually is the highest cost one, where it banishes all characters with 2 or less strength. Unfortunately, the opponent drops a Tamatoa and gets back a Lucky Dime. And what's funny is they're on 7 questing power next turn. They're going to drop the Lucky Dime, which is going to put them to 8 questing power. They can actually win the game from this spot if they draw enough items. They opt not to draw with their Hurons here, probably fearing a whole new world deck out. But I know that if I can just load this board up, hopefully they don't wipe it, but I can win the game, quest with this Cogsworth, drop Robin Hood, drop Cogsworth, and drop Anna. All I need to do is have 2 of these cards survive. They have resist +2, and the Cogsworth each have resist +1. They can't have enough cards, I don't think, in order to wipe out each individual threat, especially since the Cogsworth that's ready also has ward on it. They probably don't be prepared this board, although they probably could. And this was a critical mistake from them right there, singing that 1 jump ahead with the Huron. Because I guess they were thinking that there's no way that they have enough items in order to win the game with the Tamatoa Lucky Dime, because they're on 1 card here, right? They're going to Fishbone Quill, their last card, obviously not something that's relevant, but being on this 9 ink actually gives them enough, because with this Tamatoa, they're going to be able to get back a Popsicle, play Popsicle, and then use the second Huron to draw first. So they do lose an item before they dime, which is what they have to do, because they have to hope to draw into more items. They draw into a Popsicle, I'm pretty sure, and I'm just like, you can't be serious here. They drop another Popsicle, I'm just like, wow, right? Like, that's incredible. Look at all the items they top decked right when they needed them. Thankfully, it's still not enough. and they can only go to 19. If they didn't sing that one jump ahead with the Hiram, they actually could have quested with that Hiram for the final point of lore and won the game. My guess is they didn't think that they would actually get that lucky on their draws to get all those items, so they end up scooping, and that's how we ended up beating Sapphire Ruby.